Hi everybody, and welcome back to my crochet corner here at AllThingsCrafty. I'm Lavette, and today we have a really pretty stitch that we're going to do. And of course it's another hat. I'm really into hats right now for some reason. So this is a star stitch, and I am using Mandala Ombre cake, and it's like a nice pretty denim look to it. I did do this hat before in a different color mandala cake, and I liked it. It just came out a little too small, so I'm going to try to adjust it and make it big enough to fit like my 15-year-old, so like a pretty much adult size head. So that's what we're working on today, and of course we'll do our true crime story once I get us started on the pattern. And this is not my pattern. This is a pattern I found online, and I just have been enjoying it, so I wanted to make another one. So we will get started. We have our needle, our 6mm hook, tape measure, and we have our yarn. Start with a slip knot. And then we have to chain an odd number. The last time I chained 35, because we're going to work it up like a rectangle and then seam it together. So the last time I chained 35, it came out just around the size for my 6-year-old's head. So I'm going to go with 45 this time, and we will see how it sizes up. So I actually decided to go with 41, not 45. We'll see. So to begin, the first thing we're going to do is start at the second chain from the hook, go in, pull up a loop, then the third chain, go in, pull up a loop, then the fourth, go in, pull up a loop, then the fifth, go in, pull up a loop, and then finally the sixth, go in, pull up a loop. Got a little tangled already, just getting started. Alright, so now I have 6 chains on my loop, yarn over, and I'm going to pull through all 6 and chain 1, and that is the first star, and it creates a little hole like a little eye at the top. And so we're going to need to go into that stitch, pull up a loop, and then in between our last 2 spikes, so then we're going to go in between the last 2 spikes, pull up a loop, and then we go into that last chain, pull up a loop, and then the next 2 chains, pull up a loop and pull up a loop, and that's going to give us our 6. And yarn over, pull through all 6 and chain, and do the same thing all the way across. And pull up a loop in between the first 2, pull up a loop into the last chain, pull up a loop, and then the next 2, pull up a loop. All 6 on the hoop, yarn over. Then when I get to the last stitch of the chain, I am going to do a half double crochet in that last stitch. And then I am going to chain 2 and turn. So this is the first row, and I like the height a lot better. So that's the first row, and now I'm going to do 2 half double crochets into the eye of each of the star stitches from the previous round. So sometimes you have to turn it around to see it better. Like if I turn this one around, I see we have an eye here, eye here, 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 here. So that's the stitches I want to go into, and I'm going to do 2 half double crochets in each. Alright, and so when we get to the last stitch of the row, we're going to make 2 half double crochets, and then we are going to chain 3 and turn, and that's the end of row 2. We're going to row 3. Now row 3 is going to be similar to row 1. So we're going to go to the second chain from the hook. This one doesn't count, so 1, 2, and pull up, go in, pull up a loop. Then the third chain, go in, pull up a loop. Then the fourth, go in, pull up a loop. Fifth, pull up a loop. 6, pull up a loop. Yarn over, pull through all 6, and chain. Then we'll start going back through the eye, pull up a loop. The last spike, the last chain, and then the next 2 chains. And we'll do that and repeat this round. We'll do that and repeat the last 2 rounds for the remainder of the rectangle. So it's a 2 row. Alright, so let's get into our true crime case for today. So this is the murder of Michelle Martino. Michelle Martinko. It occurred in Iowa, and Michelle was an 18-year-old girl who went to a brand new shopping mall, $180, a few days before Christmas to do her Christmas shopping. And she was found the next morning in her car, stabbed to death over 20 times in the head, neck, and arms. So Michelle had left. She was all dressed up from a school function. She went to the mall. She was last seen by her friend Kurt Thomas, who worked there. They had spoken. She still had the money on her, so she hadn't shopped. She was on her way out and leaving. He walked her to the door, and she went to leave for the day. She was just calling it a night. So, 4 a.m. the next morning, she was found stabbed to death. And so the suspects initially was that friend, Kurt Thomas, and her ex-boyfriend, Andy Seidel. Now, the ex-boyfriend, he had a bad breakup. He was a little clingy, according to her sister, and so he was one of the main suspects. So this occurred in 1979. There was no cameras, no footage, surveillance at the mall, no DNA at that time. So the case stalled out. So fast forward almost 40 years later. Fast forward to first to 2006. That's when DNA was becoming really big and useful in solving cases. So they re-examined her dress and found the killer's DNA amongst hers. So her parents had already both died at this point, and so it was her sister left and family, and they believed it to be either her mother actually left a diary, cause and her thoughts was that it was Andy, the ex-boyfriend, but she was sort of conflicted and not sure if maybe Kurt was involved. So she died thinking it was either of those two. So the DNA in 2006, they took Andy's DNA, ruled him out. They requested Kurt's DNA. Now, he was the friend who worked at the mall. He refused because his wife was a judge, and she said, "Oh, no, no, no! Don't you just go give DNA. We don't know what this is for." Like, she was just kind of hesitant in allowing him to just give his DNA because she didn't know what was going on, and that they had found DNA from that murder. So eventually, it was a back and forth between Kurt's lawyer and the police, and they convinced him to just give a sample. So he did, and he was ruled out. So then they started testing hundreds of men connected in some way to the mall, to Michelle, whoever. Even her sister eventually got married, and even her husband was tested. Nobody at all. So they figured this murder was truly committed by a stranger. So, um, the lead investigator, he was at the time of the murder only 4 years old, but now, or 6 years old, but now, he was a lead investigator on this case, and his wife had, got a gift of a ancestry DNA report, and so she said, "Oh, it'd be nice for you to be able to use this for your case," and then that sort of started this whole ball rolling. They found Parabon Labs. Um, and they created a visual image of the person, a composite of the person based on their DNA profile. They released it to the public, but it was way too many people calling in with way too many possible people it could be. So it was no way to follow up on all of that. So then in 2018, they used the genealogy database because of another big case in the news at that time where they found the relative of a killer, and that was how they tracked it down to him. So that's where they were going with this. So the genealogy database was trying to find a relative, and it did. It found a woman who had submitted her DNA to this genealogy database, and she had so many close mark similarities in her DNA, it had to be a relative. So then they finally narrowed it down to three brothers that lived near that state of Iowa. So they had to start with ruling them out. It was Jerry, Kenneth, and Donald. Those were the three brothers. Jerry, Kenneth, and Donald Burns, that neither had any connection to the victim or the mall. So they didn't want to alert them that they were suspects. So they followed Ken first, waited till he went out to lunch, took his straw that he left for trash, he was ruled out. Then they went out of town to follow Don, waited for outside his house for him to throw away garbage, and they took a toothbrush and a glass from the garbage, ruled him out. Then it was left to Jerry. So they went and followed him. He went out to lunch, left his trash, and he took a straw, and he was confirmed the match to that DNA. So they secretly put secret hidden video cameras on the police detectives, and they went out to his business and just approached him. He was 64 years old at the time, and they waited to December 19th, which was the anniversary of her death, to do this conversation. And they talked to him, and they said they had a warrant for his DNA, and they took a swab, and they said, showed her a picture, said if he remembered her. He denied everything. No, I don't know anything about that, blah, blah, blah. So they were like, okay, well, we already know this DNA is going to match because we already took your DNA and we already tested it and you're a match. So then they decided to arrest him. He was so calm and cool and smiling and hands folded and nothing like, what? They expected, an innocent person to freak out. Uh, secret. Okay, so then they arrested him. Trial started, and then they had his cellmate from jail came in and testified against him. He had stated that he had a newspaper clipping about the murder that Jerry had autographed for him, called him his son, to my favorite son, and he told the cellmate that no matter what happens, I still win because I had the opportunity to be out there with my family all these years. Um, and then they had the DNA evidence, and then they had the defense was that the DNA evidence was some sort of transfer. It wasn't. It got on her accidentally through some transfer and not from committing a crime. And the only other evidence was not allowed to be admissible. It was some search results, some search terms he used in like a Google search that they found on his home computer. One search term he used was blonde, molested after being murdered or strangled, and then sex with a freshly dead body. He searched those two terms, but they were able to get that, the defense was able to get that to where they couldn't use that evidence in the trial. So, they played the videotape of the secret videotape, and that was sort of really damaging because of his behavior. He wasn't adamant about, oh, must be some mistake, you got the wrong guy. He was just kind of like, yeah, 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 no, I didn't do anything, no, I don't know her, no, I wasn't there. And then they asked him, could you possibly have just not remembered? And he was like, well, some things you do, you block out of your memory. So that response was a little sketchy, but anyway, with all this evidence, jury went, deliberated very quickly. Verdict was first degree murder. There is or was no death penalty in Iowa. So the sentence was just life without chance for parole for the rest of his life. And he went into custody, and that was the story of the trial for Michelle Martinko's 1979 murder, where the trial occurred in 2018. So if you enjoy these true crime segments, I would love to know about it so that I can continue and make more. And so, um, we are just gonna wrap up this hat as quickly as possible. Just trying to make it 18 to 20 inches. Um, I think I went with 20 inches. And just so you know, I made so many mistakes with this hat, dropping stitches that I had that I didn't figure out till much later. I ended up taking out so many times, at least two, three times, um, taking it out and having to basically start over from like row 3 or row 4, wherever I found the drop stitches. So, sorry for eating. But so, we are getting toward the end, and then we will seam the sides together and then whip stitch the front. So that's where I uh, will jump to here soon. Okay, here we go. Attaching the palm here, and this is it, the finished product. It was definitely big enough for my daughter. Um, she wanted something to wear with like a heavier denim jacket she has, and I think this is going to look quite nice with it. And so here's a little better look. The stitch pattern is extremely pretty, and I thank you so much for hanging in there, and hope you enjoyed our true crime case for today, and thank you again for watching.